Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Writers Chat. I'm Johnny Alexander, one of your co-hosts today, joined by Bethany Jett. And our special guest is Bethany Turner. As you all know, this is the place for all things writerly, for writers, about writers, just whatever we can come up with. Anyway, I'm really excited to have Bethany Turner as our guest today. Bethany writes romantic comedies. On her website, she says that she tackles thorny issues with, let me just read it, tackling the thorny issues of life with humor and insight, and she truly does. She's written a wonderful book that's a little bit edgy sometimes, I think, for Christian fiction, that some people might think. So I love the book, and her second book's about to release pretty soon. So, Bethany, we're going to just ask you to tell us a little bit about your writing journey and then share with us some of the incredible things that you did, very creative things that you do, and to promote your book and, give us some ideas for how we might do something similar.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. I'm so excited to chat with you. As far as my writing journey, as I've been doing marketing for the upcoming book and different things and having to answer different interview questions, one of the questions that keeps coming up is, have you always wanted to be a writer? And I'm realizing more and more and more as I answer that question, I had no idea I wanted to be an author until I was one. And it's kind of a weird anomaly a little bit, because I know that isn't typically the case. And, I feel like I was working towards it without knowing I was working towards it. Basically, I was in banking for 14 years. I'd gone from part-time teller when I was 21 years old up till vice president when I left. And I left because God told me to. And that's honestly what it was. And I didn't know why. I just knew it was what I was supposed to do, and it was time to move on. And so a couple years before I left, I had started writing. I'd never written anything. I never took any classes. I don't read a whole lot. That is my dirty little secret.
Right here on
I know. I'm so sorry. I hate to. I'm like, oh, don't judge me, everyone. I love to read. I just don't read a lot. I'm really a movie girl, truthfully. And so, I just never, writing was not my thing. I think I'd always been decent at it. It's like if the president of the bank needed a memo, I was the one he came to write it, because I had a little better way with words than some people. So I knew that, but stories hadn't really occurred to me. And but we were going through a couple different mergers. Like within a year, we merged twice.
Wow.
And as I was vice president of operations, so I was really overseeing the merger from our end. And it was easily the most stressful time of my life. And, for a long time I had done like community theater, and I had a radio show, and I'd always had these little artsy projects on the side that were always my creative outlet. During that time, I didn't have time for any of that because I was working 14-hour days and, all that stuff. So, I don't know. At one point, I had this story pop in my head, which is not The Secret Life of Sarah Hollenbeck or any of my Christian romance novels. But I had this story pop in my head, and it was this woman that I just wanted to write her journal, which, is a little strange, but it's like I knew I needed to write her memoirs, her fictional memoirs. And it was the weirdest thing, but it was just fun. And I just started doing it to get it out and to have an outlet after everybody went to bed at night, my kids and my husband. And so I did that, and I got to the end of that, and it was like, oh, that was fun. It's not bad. And cool. That was a fun experiment. So anyway, all that had happened while I was still in banking. And then, when God just kind of said it's time to go, and I walked away from a lot of financial security and benefits, the insurance.
Yeah, how did you?
It was terrifying.
Sure.
It really was. And honestly, my husband was right there with me, like, yep, let's do it. It's what God's saying to do. And I'm so grateful that he was. It was a really crazy, scary time, but we had a peace about it, and we knew that, it was going to be okay. And so at that point is when I wrote, in 6 weeks, I wrote The Secret Life of Sarah Hollenbeck. And
really I didn't remember you writing it that fast, if I knew.
6 weeks. Yeah. It was like 14 years of corporate life. Suddenly I was free. It was the summer. My kids were home, but like I'd take them to the pool and I'd write, or they'd play video games and I'd write, or whatever the case was. But it was such a rich time because I also got more time with them than I'd ever gotten before. I wasn't sacrificing that for that. And it was just, and I had more time with God than ever before, as far as really focusing on that relationship. And so it was crazy. And so after I wrote that book, I reached the end of it, and I knew I had something different. I didn't know what the journey was going to look like, or what I was supposed to do, or what direction to go, but I knew that there was something there. And so I sent out like 6 queries to agents, got 6 rejections. And then I heard about Writer's Edge, which is a manuscript submission service. It was $99 to submit. I didn't have $99, again, unemployed. But my husband, he's always the thriftier one, thank goodness. He said, you've got to do it. You've just got to do it. And we didn't know why. Again, everything I was reading, like major agents and editors in the Christian fiction community were saying those things are a ripoff. It never works. 1 in a gazillion, all these things. But we knew I was supposed to do it. And then actually this friend of mine sent me a check for $25 and said, this is an investment in you.
Oh,
and
wow.
That was it was so huge. It was because at that point, $25 was enough to make a difference. We were that strapped. And, but more than that, it was the emotional support. And so we did it. And within 13 days, I was contacted by Revell.
That's crazy.
I know.
It just goes to show that, if God wants it to happen, it's going to happen, because, just lots of things. Like, I think I have the story right. You hear people say, if your self-publishing record hasn't been really good, traditional publishing's out for you. That wasn't the case for you.
No, because my self-publishing, it ended up being 3 books, which those early books I'd written while I was in banking, it was basically a 300,000 word epic to begin with. And then I was like, I'll make it 3 books, but I put it out there for a few of my friends who wanted to read it and to have fun. And I was like, to this day, the first book in it has 27 reviews, and it's like, I'm amazed there are that many, and that's been almost a decade now, So it's like there was no success with those self-publishing, and I wasn't pushing for success. And I think that was kind of the difference. When talking with my editor a little bit, there were a few different things. One was that they weren't Christian fiction. And I didn't have, I wasn't known for not being successful in Christian fiction, if that makes sense. I think that was part of it. But I think the biggest part was, besides the God factor, which was absolutely the biggest part, but, the other biggest part was I didn't try to promote them. It wasn't like I'd really stepped out, given it everything I got, and had no success. So I think there was a little bit of a feeling of, okay, let's see what can be done. But from the get-go, my editor and the marketing team and everybody, it was like, this is kind of an experiment. We're taking a little chance. We're not going to, they weren't taking a huge chance on me. But let's see what happens, because they believed in the story and what was being done with it. And my editor and I connected, which actually she wasn't an editor at the time. She was an acquisitions assistant, and she stumbled across my book, and they said, well, you run with it. And so I was her first book at Revell. And so it was just such a God thing
story.
all around, start to finish.
Hey, you want to show us the cover of and I know some people have already said that they've just downloaded and bought it. So you've had a couple sales just by being here.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yes, and it's a Christy Award Finalist. I mean, so, there you go, from being just pulled out of not a slush pile, but one of these programs.
A glorified slush pile, yeah. A slush pile that I paid to be in. That's all.
To Christy Award Finalist. I mean, and that's just great. But Bethany did do several things, and this is actually how she and I connected. It was because she reached out to me and asked me if I would read a portion of the book and tape myself doing it.
Yeah.
And that was one of her combo things. And then she also asked us to send her outtakes. And one of my lines was like something about, I'm a woman, he's a man.
He's a man, I'm a woman.
And just as I say that, Griff, my colleague, because you all have seen him, pops up, and I said, and here's my dog.
And that's my dog. It was so perfect.
It was perfect timing. So
that was my favorite thing.
So she got
by far my favorite outtake.
Yes. So she got to do the blooper reel plus the good reel. So that was fun.
So fun.
So fun.
It was fun. And I was so, here's the thing, when I say I'm not a big reader, I'm not exaggerating. Prior to connecting with my editor at Revell, where she said, you really should read this person and this person and this person and kind of get to know, the things that are happening in the community and all of that. Prior to that, guys, I read Left Behind. I read Chronicles of Narnia. That's about it. I had not read Christian fiction at all. And so, it's like my influences were Sophie Kinsella and Helen Fielding. And
I feel that in
here. Did you?
Yeah. I think what makes it so good.
Oh, thank you.
I wondered too if that wasn't good because, I don't even like to use the word edgy because I think that brings up things that's not true about about Bethany's book. I keep wanting to say Sarah's story.
Sarah's story. That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
It's so real and so honest, but it's something we don't always want to talk about. So Sarah Hollenbeck is a steamy romance writer who becomes a Christian. But guess what? She still has passion. And when she falls in love with this guy, she wants to be with this guy. Yeah.
And it was like, of course she would, and that was the thing that I was like, I have to be honest about that because here's this woman who's 34 years old, 35, and just becoming a Christ follower, but she has written these steamy romance novels. She does have a dating history that was not centered in Christ. It's like all these things. So yes, she became a Christ follower. Yes, she's redirecting her life. Yes, she's walking away from all that, but that doesn't mean that boom, like that, I have no desire or temptation anymore for this man that is quite the hunk and I'm falling in love with.
He's the preacher.
And he's the preacher. There's that. And with him, that was important to me too, because it's like, yes, he's the preacher, but he's a widower. And so he has experience of being in love and being with a woman that he's in love with. And so he's not, it's not first love for either one of them. And although it is a very special, unique love, but, with him, it's like, okay, he's the preacher, but he's also falling in love with this woman who he's very attracted to. And I'm sorry, guys, he's a man. He has desires too. And so it was like, I was certain from day one, it was like, okay, they're not going to be together before marriage. Absolutely not. And that's going to be important to them, but they're going to talk about it and they're going to confront how difficult that is for them and that it is a conscientious decision, a very conscious decision, and not just, we committed our lives to Christ, so our chastity belt is now in place. That's not how that works. So, sorry, can you tell this is my soapbox? I'm like,
That's very tasteful. I mean, it's just handled so well, and I just love actually the ending, and I'm not even going to say anything because how she relates the ending to something else in the book and an old classic movie, which I just thought, oh my gosh, that was so perfect. It was just
Thank you.
Yeah, loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love Sarah. She tells it like it is, and yet, I mean, she's bold, and yet she has no self-confidence, really. I mean, she's discovering her identity, and she's discovering that identity in Christ, which that's a very new thing for her. She thought she knew who she was, but then through her divorce and then her salvation, one in a bad way, one in a good way, it's like who she thought she was is completely thrown away. And she has to really discover who she is. And so she was a fun one to write, her story. Yeah.
She is fun. So yeah, I appreciate y'all that have gotten it. And if you haven't, try to get a copy and read it, because it's really it's a very fun story to read. And it's a great story of redemption and change too, but, in a very light, humorous way. So
yeah,
there's still depth to it. So show us some of the things. I mean, we talked a little bit about, you had authors who read it, so you had this video then of different authors reading different sections, and then the blooper reel.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also really good with these meme images.
Yeah.
Can you share your screen? Do you have some things to show us?
Sure. How do I share the screen? Do I hit share?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, this one's new.
That's okay.
Okay, this is my favorite. This one to me, and I'll have to give it a little explanation, although, I mean, it speaks for itself in a lot of ways too. Okay, hang on. Let's see. Let's try again. Okay, this is going to be easier than I thought. Give me 1 second, but then I can do this because I actually have 2 screens, and it's going to let me share my second screen.
Oh, okay.
So that will be lovely. Okay, so here we go, I think. Here we go.
Okay, it looks like now.
Does that show it?
Yes, yeah, there we go.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, this one. So obviously, as I was rolling my eyes the entire time I trudged through this mess, a cheesy, stupid book with a cookie cutter plot you can see a mile away. I literally got that review the week the Christy finalists were announced. And it was my favorite thing ever, you guys, because I was just like, okay. So I was like, yep, let's go all out. We're going to put the Christy seal on there. Because, I mean, so much of it being, look, the minute we get a contract, the minute our book comes out, the minute we get a Christy nomination, whatever it may be, that's not the end. And you still have detractors, you still have a million things, and readers are going to see different things. And so this one, that was my absolute favorite. But I've got a few here. This was a fun one. There's little to no romantic or other conflict in the story, and what exists is, I'm sorry, asinine. But I was like, let's just load that one up with hearts. So yeah, it was fun. It's been fun to do these, and honestly, it kind of came about from let's see, here's a good one.
Marketing greatest hits. That's cute.
Idol. Yeah, these are my greatest hits. So because I've gotten a lot of now they're just scrolling. Who knows what's next? Book was really bad. Storyline was 0. It never developed into anything. Yeah, so it's it's been a lot of fun to do that, and it really stemmed from y'all saw my little glimpse of a soapbox. Some of these reviews brought out my soapbox in a major way, because it's like, okay, if you don't like my writing, if you don't like the story, if you didn't get into the book, whatever, it's like, I respect every reader's opinion, and you're not going to like everything. And I certainly don't. And so that doesn't bother me. But when there were things, some of the reviews hurt. Some of them attacked my faith. Some of them have attacked, there was one woman at one point who was contacting people on Goodreads who had dared to give my book a 5-star review.
Oh my God.
And
wow.
said things like, this is sinful, and how could you, all these things. And like one review that says, I crossed the line for Christian fiction so much by having the man and the woman talk about sex. It was like, no. If we don't have them talk about it, they're not going to handle it properly. It's like, and so, again, it was, but like the personal attacks, which were quite a few. And so that was really where it started. It was like, I can't let myself be affected by this, negatively anyway. So it was just like, I'm going to shine a happier light on it and do that. But then it really took off, and it's really been by far, I think more people know me for my negative reviews than they actually do for my book at this point.
It does seem like when I noticed either on Facebook or Instagram or something, there were all these comments. I think, oh my gosh, Bethany has just done this great job of using these 1- and 2-star reviews and making these beautiful, beautiful images to create a following. You've done that. That's part of your following. And I think it's genius. Even if that wasn't
it
happened, right? It happened. Yeah.
Exactly. I started to realize pretty quickly what it was going to be, because there was so much. At first I was getting some sympathy, and I had to kind of stop that. I was like, no, that's not what I'm going for here. Because that was never it. It wasn't, look, they said something mean. No, that wasn't the point. And so, but I think now, there's still new people coming in and seeing them for the first time, and I'm still getting a little of that. But overall, it's been, the people who are following it laugh with me. Here's what I think the biggest thing has been as far as helping my following is by doing these. It's like, if you get the tone with which I'm doing this, you get me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's so transparently me, for better or worse. Look, I'm going to take some hard stuff and I'm going to laugh at it. That's what I do in my life. It's what I'm going to do in my writing. And so it's like, okay, if you like this, you'll probably like my book. If you're offended by these, you'll probably be offended by the book. So, it's been good. Yeah, don't read it. That's fine. So, yeah, but it's been fun. It really has.
And then you have a whole nother set of images, and they're also on your Instagram. And it's, I think your website too. It's See Bethany Writes is your handle. So on
Correct.
Instagram, her website, seebethanyWrites.com. You have set all these cute little memes or images with people holding your book. And now,
yes.
How do you even create those?
I didn't.
Oh,
okay, here's the thing. I developed very early on. Okay, I have to step back one more and say one more thing, which is the best thing that I have had going for me in my entire publishing journey is that I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I don't have a clue what I'm supposed to do. I don't have a clue of what other people have done. I've learned now, but I've already established that I don't care. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Yeah. But when I first started, I just did what sounded fun to me. And so like with my launch team, I don't get a new launch team for every book. I have my launch team, and, a few people have come and gone, and it's grown and expanded and changed a little. But for the most part, this core group of people have been with me since before Sarah Hollenbeck came out. And we've developed community. And so that's one thing. And so when I go to them and I'm like, hey guys, I really want to shine a light on this, whatever this week, they've gotten to know me well enough and what I like, and I've gotten to know what they're capable of and what they like enough that they created all these memes. Like,
wow.
just unbelievable stuff. While we talk, I'll see if I can pull a couple of those up real quick.
Great.
But
Where are those?
they're on Instagram.
I'm stalking you.
And good, stalk away. I love stalkers. Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, Facebook's, I'm kind of a latecomer to Instagram a little bit. It's harder for me because I like to talk, as you can all tell. So like focusing on the picture has been a bit of an adjustment for me. But okay, here's a couple. Well, this one was this was one of my absolute favorites. And this one was from a reader. Let me share this one. Okay, is that showing?
I love that one. That's one of my favorites of yours too.
I just love it so much because it's like, I promise you guys, all I actually asked was, could I get pictures of people reading the book? I literally meant them, the team, the people in the group, and some people did that and those were fabulous too, but so many people created these things. And so Tom Hanks in You've Got Mail, but then we have John Cusack in Say Anything. And let's see. Some While You Were Sleeping. You're seeing all sorts of things here, but because the scene where he's like, I got ice capades, I know a guy, I got T-slash, I know a guy, which T-slash is what we all call it. And yeah, the scene from You've Got Mail of the shoe books, so I just have these amazingly creative people who have just done amazing things. And I didn't ask for any of that, you guys. I just have an amazing tribe. That's all there is to it.
They are amazing and so creative. And it's just fun because, again, the book has this humorous, it's humorous. And then you put all this together so it just matches, where these might not work for, for like historical romances or, those kinds of stories.
Right.
But it works for you. And then you also have this, like your Instagram is so pretty because you kind of got this color scheme going too. I don't know how intentional that is, but with the greens and the pinks and all, and it matches your website. And
yeah,
so, you use other colors too. There's yellows and all kinds of things, but it seems like there's a continuity there as well.
Yeah, I tend to go heavy into the book colors, and just kind of create a mood that hopefully will make you think of the books when you see me. And like when Sarah Hollenbeck came out, and it was this, okay, guys, there are so many of this look now. In October of 2017, it stood out like you would not believe. I was so impressed with what Revell did. And that makes me think I have to show you one of my marketing things here, which I think sharing. I created this thing because Sophie Kinsella's book came out, and I was like, excuse me now?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And of course, it's like Sophie Kinsella is Sophie Kinsella, and I'm me, and she has never heard of me. And I, joking about all of that, but the style, and Revell was ahead of the curve. And so I was so it's like, I really have gone into those colors. And so then when they released the Wooing Katie McCaffrey cover, which is my next one, and I just have a print out of that. But
I think
they
come out
match.
in May, right? Yeah, they go very well together.
May 21st. And they created, even though these books have nothing to do with each other, it's like they're very much cementing the style. So I just kind of do my part on the marketing side to cement that style as well.
What, Bethany?
I said it looks very good. The Fault in Our Stars. I think that's the title. John Green.
Kind of does.
Yeah.
Like imagery or whatever. That's very cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
This book on there and owned it. Like that way, you know what I mean. Like before anyone can be like, "Oh, you just ripped it." No, I didn't.
I know. Because I'm like, if you see Secret Life of Sarah Hollenbeck and Surprise Me by Sophie Kinsella, no one is thinking, "Oh, Sophie Kinsella totally is ripping off Bethany Turner's book." So it's like, yeah, I'm going to point out, y'all, I had it first, just for the record.
I like how, too, you had that hashtag, the typewriters in the box. I mean, that's just
Like all the hearts are coming out of her typewriter, too. I believe it. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Great cover.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I
And
have
really
not been watching the chat, so are there any questions I've missed? Or
Lots of good comments, lots of things about the way you're writing your books. I think that's what I liked too. Because I don't like a lot of Christian fiction for the main reason where it's like they're preaching to me, and I'm like, I'm already a Christian. That's why I'm reading your book.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I got that romance novel that I wanted without having to deal with a lot of the stuff that's in the general market romance. Which is what I felt like you were writing to a Christian audience, not preaching to a Christian audience. And I thought, I will read everything that you write because there's so few books like that. And I thought it was spot on. I thought it was great.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, I wrote it for myself. It's the book I would like to read. And I think, Bethany, I'm very much similar to you in that way where, yeah, I've been in church all my life. I don't try to convert me. I'm there, Jesus and I've gotten along for a very long time now, so I don't need that, but I want stuff that will uplift me, that will encourage me, and maybe still convict me a little bit. It's like there are elements of the stories, probably more in my case in Katie McCaffrey's story than in Sarah Hollenbeck's story, just of I've so been guilty of that, and being able to play out how that plays out. But yeah, I believe there is a place for every type of book. It's just not what I'm called to write. The more preachy type, that's not going to be my style.
It almost seems like you've kind of brought in a new genre, or in a sense, or at least a subgenre, I think, of Christian romance by adding all that comedy and adding the truth. I mean, that there are things that Christians deal with too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
And I think we're alienating a whole group of people if we don't acknowledge that, and especially millennials and the generations coming up. I'm like on the cusp of Gen X. I think I'm a Zennial or whatever they call, but like my generation and younger, you're going to alienate us if that's all there is. Again, let there be enough books for everybody, but you need to be offering something there as well.
Yeah, I'm glad Revell took a chance on you, and it's turned out so well. And so, What's next? So you've got Wooing Katie. What is it? Katie McCaffrey.
Katie McCaffrey. Yeah.
Katie McCaffrey.
So that one comes out May 21st. Yeah. And it's a story of a woman, Katie McCaffrey, and her longtime boyfriend, Will Whitaker. Well, I'm horrible at the elevator pitch. Let me just read what the thing says. Will is determined to win back the woman he never should have let get away, and with every foolproof romantic comedy tactic as his guide, what could possibly go wrong? So basically, yeah, after 4 years, she decides to step away from the relationship. The love is there, but they have a kind of a crisis in their relationship, and she's like, this is going nowhere. And it's not about getting a ring on her finger. It's about, okay, why don't I have a ring on my finger? It's like, okay, why does he not love me enough to want to commit to this life with me? And so, which isn't the case at all, as we quickly find out. And so Will does everything he can to win her back. And yes, he's a sports guy. He's clueless, but he uses all her favorite romantic comedy movies as a guide of what she's done. And everything goes horribly wrong, and the rest is history. So, yeah. It's a lot of fun.
I love that because we love those movies, and to know that you're kind of like drawing on those is really
yeah. Well, and it was so fun, and I was so thrilled that Revell incorporated so many of the themes I asked them to, or pointed out would be good. Like, that is because of the boombox and Say Anything. And that is the Empire State Building, Sleepless in Seattle. And those are the daisies, which are the friendliest flower. And you've got mail.
Yeah.
And it was all it was all tied in because those are things that do appear in the book
Nice.
in various ways, even though, like I said, they don't go as nearly as well in Will and Katie's versions, but they try.
That's I can't wait for it to come out. And then what's after that? Do you have something after?
I do. I have one more on the contract officially so far, and it will come out in May of 2020. I'm working on that one now. It's due May 1st. I'd love your all's prayers. This book has been more of a struggle than anything I've written. I thought I was writing a rom-com, and I'm not sure that I am. This one has a little less comedy, although I don't know. I can't write without the comedy. It's still there, but it's not overtly romantic comedy. So it's another kind of tackling the thorny issues of life kind of thing, and we're gonna see how it goes. But yeah, it'll be coming out in a little over a year.
Oh, wow. Well, good for you. I'm so excited for you. Really.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys want to pop in and have questions, or did you have anything else to show us before we have everybody do that?
No, I mean, I'm happy to show more if anyone wants to see more, but I covered a few of my favorites there. I would say one other thing that Ravel and I came up with early on, which was Sarah Hollenbeck's writing tips. And they were all based on what Sarah would say to writers, which would be really bad ideas.
I've missed those. I haven't seen those.
Yeah, those were early on. Those were early when the book came out. So I'll share a couple of those.
And just again, Sarah was a very steamy romance writer, and she has to write another steamy romance book after becoming a Christian. So that's another one of the things in the story. One of the, what's the word I'm looking for?
The conflict or the conflict.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's under contract. She's hugely successful. People are looking at the movies. The book as potential movies, and that's what she's dealing with. I mean, she's on the Tonight Show as the second guest, which is very disgruntling to her. But so giving her tips, which we're like, there you go. When the best talk show author you can get is as a second guest on the Tonight Show. Remember, you're an author, not a Kardashian. So, we just put out her writing tips, and which are so ridiculous. And we had fun with it from day one. And I was just so grateful that Ravel let me be me and really captured that. So it was fun.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. If everyone wants to come on, and then, we've got someone else just ordered from Amazon. So that's cool.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, guys is right. And people understanding about elevator pitches and
mm-hmm. They're the worst.
Can I read my favorite line?
Yeah, sure. Who say it? Sophia?
It was my first favorite line in the book. There were a lot. Okay, so I hadn't killed any Christians. That was my first LOL.
That was Sarah comparing herself to the Apostle Paul, of course, and figuring, as bad as she hadn't killed any Christians, and Paul had been redeemed, so surely she could too. So yeah. Yeah, that's a really good one to just sum up the tone of the book right there.
That's great. That's great.
Oh.
Anyone else? Something to add, say?
So I wanted to ask a little bit about Writer's Edge. I considered that several years ago and decided not to for lots of reasons. I didn't feel like my manuscript was ready. Do you put up the whole manuscript or just an excerpt of it, or?
You put up, I believe it was the first 3 chapters, and the way that, and a detailed synopsis, and your typical query stuff. But I believe the way that worked, if I'm recalling correctly, because it was a long time from them picking it up to actual publication for me. My contract was over 2 years from signing contract to release. So I'm going back to like 2015 here. So I'm going to try to remember. But you submit to Writer's Edge, and then they make the decision of whether or not to put you on their list. So even submitting to Writer's Edge, full disclosure, doesn't mean that you'll necessarily be put on their list that goes to editors. But if they do select you for their list, they also give you some feedback. I think they give some feedback either way, actually. And but they give you some feedback, and then it goes on a list. And then if the editors or the agents, read it and want more, then they will contact you directly to get a full manuscript. So you don't have to have a full manuscript to submit, but the full manuscript should be ready to go, because I can vouch for the fact that it can move fast. And I will say my manuscript was in horrible shape. I had no idea how horrible it was. And I think that's, everything we read and hear talks about how polished your manuscript should be. And yes, I would not disagree with that. The cleaner, the better. But I will also say sometimes when it's the right editor, they know what they're looking for in your style of writing, even if they want to completely rework your story. And I think that was the case with my editor a little bit, is she latched on to my style, which my style was the same. My voice was the same in my very first horrible draft as it was in the final book, even if much of the writing got changed around. It's, I think knowing your authentic voice is actually the biggest step towards finding publication, in my opinion. That goes against what everything would say.
I think that's just such excellent advice, because when you read Sarah's, or I keep want to call it Sarah's book, Bethany's book, you're going to see that voice come through so clearly. And I think you're right that if you have that voice and you have the story, editors can look beyond, but it's going to be the exception, not the rule. I mean,
right.
But still, it's like, it can happen. It can happen.
Yeah. Because I think, the thing is, your voice is your voice, and always work to strengthen it. But, your writing, you may get it as tip-top as you think it can possibly be, and there's still no telling what your editor is going to ask of you. So absolutely do the best you can in that, and do get it as clean, and do learn the craft and all of these things. I would never discourage that, but don't forget to focus on voice too, and make sure that your voice is what you want it to be.
And something fresh and new, and and like we've talked before, and God was there. He wanted this to happen, so
that's it. That's it. I can't. There's no other explanation to many of the things. So,
this may be a little bit personal, but if you don't mind answering, talking about the manuscript wasn't in that greatest shape and all, what was the, like, maybe one writing weakness that then you've really had to work on? Do you mind sharing that?
No, I don't mind sharing that at all. I tend to make my women not very likable in the beginning, because and that has come up in both books now. And for me, it makes total sense, because they're growing. And because I write in this first-person narrative stream of consciousness style, they're not going to be the same person at the end that they are at the beginning. And that, I think what makes my voice kind of unique is that doesn't just come through in the story. That comes through in the voice, as well as you are seeing the character change. And I don't know that I was subtle enough about that in some ways, because I kept getting so many comments back of Sarah's just not very likable, and she's so selfish, and Sarah just really, and actually I've gotten this comment a fair amount from some readers who didn't like the book, even after it came out, of Sarah's so selfish, and it's all about her, and we never get to hear Piper's story. Well, it's not Piper's story. And And, and one thing even said, like, we don't even know what Sarah looks like. It's like criticizing my writing. And it's like, that's fine if you don't like that style, but don't think that I just overlooked that. I'm not going to tell you what Sarah looks like because Sarah is writing the story. And when we talk to people, we're not saying, so there I was with my long brown hair and my, tight fitting dress. We don't do that. And I wanted very much it to feel like you're in a conversation with this woman. And so that was the biggest, like the only thing I insisted on when I was working with Revell for cover was do not put a person on the cover. Do not, because I don't want them to have any image in their mind of Sarah apart from the one that they form in their head by having a conversation with her.
Yeah.
And so
we don't know what color hair she has.
You don't have a clue. You know nothing about how this woman looks. And I don't think if you're in the story, hopefully it doesn't really matter. You know what Ben looks like, because you betcha she's going to tell us what Ben looks like. She cares about that.
She does. She tells you, but you're right, and that's a common thing. We see that with beginning writers that they will. It's the whole look in the mirror thing, and it's just such a cliche. But you cannot have the person describing themselves. My blue eyes, my blonde hair. You just
right.
You just can't. And beginner writers often will try to do that. So, and Piper, you mentioned Piper. Now, to let everyone know who Piper is.
Piper is Sarah's best friend. Doesn't start out that way. They meet in book group and in book club. And some of the ladies of book club, such as Mullet Marie, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, she names. I've forgotten that. Yeah, it's been a while since I read the story.
Yeah. Piper's one of the women in the group, and the other ladies discover Sarah's book that she is writing, her very steamy romance novels, and they love them and want to read them. And Piper has a problem with them. And she and Piper get into it a little bit, but it results in Piper leaving group. And she barely knows Piper at that point. I mean, they'd become best friends, but it had been over a very quick period of time, and Sarah had no other friends. She was in a very dark place. But Piper eventually reaches out, and they do make amends, and it's ultimately Piper who leads Sarah to Christ, and ultimately leads Sarah to Ben as well, because she takes her to church, and there's the new pastor. So,
and Sarah wrote under a pen name, right? So
she did, Raindeberg, which came about because it was raining, and they were reading Pride and Prejudice and Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and so Piper's like, really? Piper spotted that immediately. No, because Sarah was trying to pretend that, it was a friend's book and all this stuff. And it's ridiculous, y'all. But Piper's pretty sharp. And Piper kind of becomes Sarah refers to her as her Christian Mr. Miyagi, who basically teaches her the ways of the faith. And it's kind of her moral compass in a lot of ways as Sarah's starting to try to figure it all out.
Anybody else have anything they want to ask Bethany while she's here with us about marketing?
Yes, Rain with an E. I have to point out, Sophia said with an E. Rain with an E.
Well, I'm going to go back up then to a comment that Rhonda made a while ago. And she said, I'm a preacher's wife and our household is just like everyone else. Mm-hmm. We have flaws and we have overcome most of them. Why not be honest? I'm still a work in progress.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And right now I'm in my office at our church offices. I'm on staff of a church. That was the other part of the journey that I never saw coming, that God pulled into place in my unemployed time. So it's like I grew up the daughter of a minister. I have been in church all my life, actively involved, and now I've been on staff for almost 5 years. And so it's like, I see the people that come through these doors every day the people who are on the staff and the ministers and all that, but also the people who are in the church and all this stuff. And it's like, we're just fooling ourselves if we act like we're leading these perfect lives. And so, yeah, I think we need to fess up about that. We can do a lot more good by confronting that rather than hiding it, I think.
I will say there is nobody funnier than church people. Church people are hysterical. And they're just the outrageous things they say and do, and they're so deadly serious about it. I find, I done a little stand-up comedy type stuff. And the funniest thing is when you make fun of those stereotypes, you announce a stereotype and like you really believe it. And people just can't, they know that that's humor, but they laugh because they know someone like that.
Yeah.
It's a nervous laughter, I think, like a, oh, yeah. Well, has anyone read John Acuff's, what is it, Stuff Christians Say? Is that what it's called? If you haven't read it, read it. It's hilarious and so spot on in a lot of ways. So yeah, John Christ is really hitting on that right now too. It's like, yeah, let's own it. So
absolutely. Okay, Melissa has a question. Melissa, do you just want to go ahead and ask?
Yeah, I could go ahead and do that. For authors who are preparing to launch their first book, what would you say is the most savvy thing they could do to market it online?
I think the most savvy thing you can do is form a community. And it has to be, look, you can't, any Facebook ad you do or any Amazon ad or BookBub deal or if you can get a BookBub deal, get a BookBub deal. But, anything like that you do, it's only going to go so far if you don't have a group of people surrounding you and supporting you and encouraging you and wanting to share you with the world. And I think in order to do that, yes, there are authors that we may love their books and we will share that. But it's hard to start out that way by saying, oh, my work will speak for itself, because rarely is that actually going to do what you think it will do. And so I think, if you can be transparent and in whatever way that is for you. It's like, if you follow my sites, my social media, almost everything I talk about is pop culture. Mm-hmm. That's not because that's my brand. It is my brand because that's who I am. Yeah. And I speak pop culture. I can, I got up in church a couple weeks ago because as a church, we're being challenged to try to memorize John 15. And I was like, look, guys, I really have always struggled with memorizing scripture, but there are about 10 to 15 different movies I can get up here and act out for you right now. I know pop culture, and it's like, that's not a good thing. I need to work on that. And yet it's who I am. And so own that. So, rarely will a week or a month go by where I don't talk about You've Got Mail or Colin Firth or whatever, but these are the same conversations that I'm having with my friends. And so I'm allowing them, you definitely you still have to put forth your public version of that. Transparency is great to a point. You have to keep your private life private to a certain extent, but do be transparent in who you are and your personality, and you'll find your people, and you'll discover that those people will move heaven and earth to get other people to read your book. And I think everything else you can do, any other thing you can do, will benefit from that.
That's great. Great.
Good question.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll end it there. Bethany, thank you again so very much. We will ask everyone to stay on for a little bit for the after party if you want to. And remind you, next week we'll be talking about book launch teams with Lindsay Hart, and invite you back for that. So if you're on the replay, if you're watching on the replay, we'd love to have you join us live anytime that you're able. We're here every Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central. Those of you who are here, we really appreciate it. You know that we love y'all very much. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.